Coming up on UCF Nightly News, a statewide bus tour came to campus this week to talk about medical marijuana. What you should know about Amendment 2 before heading to the polls.
Also in politics, the Supreme Court made a surprising decision about same-sex marriage. Coming up, we'll tell you what it means for the U.S.
And homecoming is approaching quickly. Students can get their tickets now for concerts and other events before they run out.
Thanks for watching. Nightly News starts now.
Good afternoon, Central Florida. It's Friday, October 10th. I'm Devin Cafaro.
And I'm Paige Sterner. Welcome to Nightly News. In less than a month, voters will decide whether medical marijuana should be legal in Florida.
And in the final stretch before the November election, supporters of the proposed Amendment 2 launched a bus tour at UCF. I was there to ask both supporters and opponents what this amendment means for Florida and to find out what you need to know before voting.
Call Morgan & Morgan, fighting for Amendment 2.
John Morgan, the face of the medical marijuana campaign, kicked off his campus-by-campus bus tour at UCF, urging students to vote yes on Amendment 2.
Yes on 2!
In front of this crowd on Monday, Morgan spoke about his brother Tim.
The drugs that they were giving Tim to take were unbelievable.
Tim became a paraplegic at age 18 and needs constant pain management. He says marijuana helps where other pain meds hurt.
I was on OxyContin. I smoke pot now. I eat chocolate. There are no drugs involved.
3 drugs that he was prescribed over the life of his injury have been recalled because of the damage they do.
But not everyone in Florida agrees.
Cannabis certainly shows, great promise in that arena, but not in the way that they're trying to push Amendment 2 in the state of Florida. This is not about medicine. This is about backdoor de facto legalization of smoked marijuana.
Dr. Jessica Spencer is part of the statewide Vote No on 2 campaign. She says the amendment has many loopholes that could be dangerous.
The children. Out of all 23 states that have medical marijuana laws, we are the only one that has 0 age restriction. There's no age restriction. And so what that means is you're now giving youth a constitutional right to obtain pot without their parents' consent.
But in the end, medical marijuana will be up to the people. A recent Survey USA poll shows that support is less than the 60% needed for the amendment to pass. And with only a few weeks left before the election, Morgan says he's counting on Florida's youngest voters. Voters approve the amendment, Florida will be the 24th state to legalize medical marijuana. The election takes place on November 4th. But marijuana isn't the only thing voters will see on the ballot. Perhaps the most anticipated part of the election is the race for governor. It's going to be a close one, but the most recent Survey USA poll shows that Democratic nominee Charlie Crist is leading Republican Governor Rick Scott by 2%. The two swapped the lead many times in the past few months, and neither has more than 50% approval. But Florida is known as a swing state, and although Crist is projected to win now, Florida politics expert Aubrey Jewett says political trends favor Scott.
The political cycle that we're in is 6 years into President Obama's term, and so Republicans may have higher turnout, Democrats may have less. That may sort of sweep him over the finish line yet.
The candidates are scheduled to debate 3 times before the election.
And making national headlines, same-sex marriage is now legal in 30 states. At least for now. Nightly News reporter Brittany Jackson found out how Central Florida community feels about the change and what they see for the future.
The Supreme Court made a surprising decision to stay out of the gay marriage battle, leaving it all up to the states. They refused to hear cases from 5 states this week, temporarily making same-sex marriage legal for more than half of America. Indiana, Oklahoma, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin wanted to keep their same-sex marriage bans, but the justices chose to give that authority to state courts. The ruling, or absence thereof, is raising mixed reactions from members of the Central Florida community.
I think it's a great milestone for equality in this country, and it just goes to show that this was bound to happen as time went on. and now it's up to the states to essentially pick up the tab and, get legislation through to continue this equality.
But not everyone sees this shift in ruling as a positive. Some people feel the responsibility should be completely placed on the U.S. Supreme Court justices to prevent disputes between states in the future.
I'm not a gay man personally, but I have strong beliefs on the issue. What if 49 out of the 50 states do allow same-sex marriage? That could potentially lead to problems in the future.
Since the ruling, state officials report an increase in marriage license applications in the states that no longer have same-sex marriage bans. In Orlando, Brittany Jackson, UCF, Nightly News.
Here in Florida, Attorney General Pam Bondi says she is still planning to fight for a ban on same-sex marriage. And in parts of the Middle East, unrest continues to grow. For the past week, the U.S. and its allies launched several airstrikes in the Syrian city Kobani. With the threat nearing Turkey, President Recep Erdogan says airstrikes aren't working. Erdogan says ISIL is close to capturing Kobani, and if they succeed, the group would control a large stretch of the Turkish border. The Turkish army has yet to join the fight against the Islamic State despite the threats to their border.
This is a really important one, is that airstrikes alone are not going to do this, not going to fix this, not going to save the town of Kobani. We know that, and we've been saying that over and over again, and yet we continue to get questions of, well, why aren't you doing more? And how come they aren't more effective? But what we've been very honest about the limits of air power here.
The U.S. press secretary says moving forward, the conflict in Syria will continue to be a struggle, and people should be prepared for more villages to be taken. One of the most exciting weeks on campus is right around the corner. Students are now preparing for homecoming festivities. This week, student representatives started handing out tickets for homecoming events. Students are lining up in the Union to get their own passes to see special guest performers like B.O.B., Icona Pop, and Chris D'Elia. Homecoming week starts October 19th.
Melissa now joins us at the desk for a first look at our weather.
How's it looking out there, Melissa?
Well, you ladies, you couldn't ask for a better day. It's wonderful outside right now, but humidity and temperatures are on the rise. Currently, it's 87 degrees with 57% chance of, with 50% humidity. There's no chance of rain, and winds are coming in east-northeast at 10 miles per hour. A little later in the show, I'll have your 5-day outlook.
Thanks, Melissa.
Still ahead on Nightly News, the CDC is stepping up safety precautions for Ebola here in the U.S. Find out how Central Florida is preparing for a potential outbreak.
And October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Find out what UCF is doing to recognize and help victims of abuse. world is on high alert after the CDC reported nearly 14 cases of Ebola outside of West Africa.
The first person diagnosed with the virus in the U.S. died this week. Now, Center for Disease Control officials are stepping up screening procedures for America's safety. Nightly News reporter Brittany Jackson looked into the spread of the virus and how prepared Central Florida would be if an outbreak occurred.
Officials say the 2014 Ebola epidemic is the largest in history. Late in September, the first case of Ebola was diagnosed in the U.S., causing health officials to take extra precautions for the safety of American citizens. Here in Central Florida, health officials are also making sure people are safe in the area.
Florida Hospital uses protocols for wearing protective equipment and protective gear as recommended by the CDC. We are in compliance with that, and we feel very confident that by following these protocols, we will protect the patient as well as prevent spread of disease to other healthcare workers or to the general population.
Here on campus, health officials initiated a program for international students and Knights traveling outside of the country. They are required to be screened for the virus within 21 days of arriving back in the U.S. Meanwhile, CDC officials say the likelihood of the virus spreading throughout the U.S. is less than 1%. So far, they've reported 2 cases of Ebola in Nebraska and Texas. In Orlando, Brittany Jackson, UCF, Nightly News.
Airport screenings are set to take place in New York, Atlanta, Newark, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Any travelers with Ebola symptoms will have to fill out a questionnaire and have their temperature taken by CDC officials once the plane lands. Right now, airports in Central Florida area do not have screenings in place. Nationally recognized medical professionals and UCF students are coming together. Orlando is hosting this year's bi-yearly American Academy of Communication and Healthcare Research and Teaching Forum. AAC officials are partnering with the UCF Health Communication Program, and students in the program will also be attending the forum. The conference will feature workshops, opportunities to meet industry professionals, and guest speakers from around the nation.
At this conference, you actually get to sit down and meet with some of the leaders in the field and ask them questions. So what's on the frontier? Or they may share with you their vision.
The conference is from October 17th to October 19th at the Rosen Plaza on International Drive, and it's open to the public. Light Up the Night took place on Monday evening to recognize victims of domestic violence.
The 7th annual event kicked off Domestic Violence Awareness Month on campus. UCF Victim Services hosted a discussion about the ways intimate partner violence impacts the community. A UCF student spoke on her experiences in an abusive relationship. Survivor Emily Whitlock recalled both the physical and emotional hardships.
The emotional drain that depletes us as human beings is just as damaging, if not more, as the physical violence that some of us have endured.
Speakers from the event say domestic violence affects 1 in every 4 college students. To find out where to go if you or someone you care about needs help, go to knightlynews.ucf.edu. Last week, we told you about how UCF athletics and NFL players helped one Central Florida family raise money through a sports auction. And now, with more than $2,000 raised, the family has more money to help pay for their daughter's medical treatments. 18-month-old Reagan has glutaric acidemia type 1, a rare metabolic genetic disorder. The toddler suffered from a metabolic crisis back in April, causing seizures and severe brain damage. To help pay for her physical therapies, NFL players Blake Bortles, Brandon Marshall, and Josh Sitton donated signed memorabilia for the family to sell in a sports auction. The Wurzel family says they're grateful to everyone who helped out. And now some sad news for the UCF community. Dr. Ali Reza Sayedi, a professor of electrical and computer engineering, unexpectedly passed away on Saturday. His contributions are too many to list, but include an innovative course for the electrical engineering department. One of his most recent achievements was being selected as one of the nation's 77 most innovative young engineering educators. In addition to teaching, Sayedi did research and held several patents.
Orlando's Sunrail ridership keeps declining. Just 5 months after the commuter train opened, transportation officials say they're not making enough money to cover costs.
And earlier this week, reporter Melissa Lujan looked into what officials believe is causing the decline and what plans they have to improve the system.
Orlando's Sunrail commuter train is not living up to expectations. Transportation officials say ridership on the train fell for a third straight month.
We were up in 4,200 boardings per day or so. We were, in some days we were way over the 4,300 boardings per day that we said after year one of operation that we would achieve. And then we started seeing, as the summer months waned and we started getting into August and September, when school starts, it dropped.
Olson says there could be a number of reasons behind the drop, including a faulty computer system, people not paying for tickets, and recent accidents.
Involving vehicles, collisions with vehicles or vehicles colliding with trains, we've had 4.
But to cover operational costs, the Sunrail needs more than 4,000 passengers daily. So far, the weekday average is more than 3,000 passengers.
Despite the recent decline, Sunrail officials expect ridership to rise when construction here on I-4 begins spring 2015.
Monthly Sun Card holder Joshua Snyder thinks it will be more convenient for everyone to use the Sunrail.
Anyone that takes I-4, unless you want to go down 417 and drive, several miles out of the way, if you're off the I-4 corridor, I couldn't imagine people not taking the train.
Olson says before November they will hire ambassadors to help with the ridership decline. In Orlando, Melissa Lujan, UCF Nightly News.
Transportation officials will also debate adding extra hours and weekend service before the end of the year. Do you like a little bit of mystery and a whole lot of dancing? Well, the Hispanic American Student Association here on campus is throwing a masquerade ball to wrap up Hispanic Heritage Month. The party will be at the Pegasus Ballroom this Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m.
Sisters in Chi Omega will be able to move back into their house this spring. UCF administrators suspended the sorority after hazing allegations came to light last semester. The organization tried to appeal the suspension, but got denied. And in financial news, a huge drop on Wall Street. The Dow Jones fell more than 300 points yesterday. It was the second biggest drop in one day this year. Financial experts say the hardest hit stocks include energy stocks, including oil prices. One stock did fare quite well, though. Apple stock went up 22 cents. A new exhibit is on display in the Visual Arts Building. Artwork from faculty members at UCF will be displayed from now to November 7th. The showcase features sculptures, paintings, and photography. Artists in the show are UCF professors who received national and international recognition for their artwork. The gallery is open to the public from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and admission is free.
And if you want to visit the gallery this weekend, the weather is looking great. Melissa tells us more about what to expect this weekend.
Yes, Devin, and even though we are enjoying wonderful weather here, we are tracking a typhoon Bongfang nearing Japan. It is near a U.S. military base with 35,000 servicemen and women. It is currently moving really slow at 9 miles per hour, has sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. This is equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane. It is expected to make landfall this weekend. Now let's take it back home at the Florida State temperature map. We're looking at mid to high 80s. Orlando, Tallahassee, and Tampa is at 87 degrees. Miami down there at 86 degrees, and Jacksonville 85 degrees Fahrenheit. If we look at the Central Florida radar map, we see moisture off the East Coast, but our evening commute looks like it will be wonderful with clear skies all around Orlando. Let's look at the 5-day forecast. We're seeing a trend of high 80s for the whole week. For the lows will be around 70 and high of 60s. Friday through Sunday, 0% chance of rain with random scattered storms, but not that big of a possibility. Monday and Tuesday, we're looking at 30 and 40% chance of rain. Overall, it looks like it'll be a wonderful weekend here in Central Florida. Back to the desk with Devin and Paige.
Thanks, Melissa. UCF against UCF's game against BYU was last night, and the win was incredible.
I mean, it was amazing. I was there, and we had so much fun. I mean, it went right down to the wire.
It was a real nail biter. And if you stick around right after this, we'll tell you how that game went down, and we also have volleyball and soccer highlights. Sports is up next. Welcome back, Knights fans. I'm Al Hernandez, and this is your update in the world of UCF sports. The football team hosted BYU last night and squeaked out a nail-biter. UCF led 10-3 at half, but BYU scored 21 unanswered, capped by a Christian Stewart touchdown pass to Devin Mahina, and took a 24-10 lead in the third quarter. After narrowing the deficit to 7, Justin Holman took a shot downfield and found Josh Reese in the end zone for a 37-yard score, tying the game at 24. At the end of regulation, BYU blocked Sean Moffitt's 50-yard field goal attempt, sending us to overtime. In OT, Holman hit Willie Stanback on 3rd and goal from the 4 to take a 31-24 lead. Then on 4th and 3, Stewart's pass fell incomplete, and UCF held on to the victory, improving to 3-2. Next week, UCF is hosting Tulane on Saturday at noon. Now it's time for NFL Nights, and it was a rough week for UCF alumni. Blake Bortles made his second start for the Jaguars, who fell to the Pittsburgh Steelers 17-9. Bortles completed 61% of his passes for 191 yards. He threw a pair of interceptions, including a fourth-quarter pick six. Storm Johnson also saw his first action of the year, rushing 4 times for 27 yards for Jacksonville. Brandon Marshall made only 3 catches for 44 yards in a 31-24 Bears loss to the Panthers. And Denver Broncos released kicker Matt Prater last week after his 4-game suspension for a DUI ended. The women's soccer team continued its domination this week, defeating Houston 4-0. The women are 11-2 overall this year, including 4-0 in conference play. The ladies won their last 22 conference games and look to continue their success tonight at USF at 8 o'clock. The men came in The men came to a pair of 1-1 draws this week, first with SMU on Saturday, then at Temple on Wednesday. Their record now stands at 1-5-4, and they've tied all 3 conference games so far. They play tomorrow night at Memphis at 8. The Lady Knights volleyball team found more success this week. The team defeated Temple, UConn, and USF this week. They are now 12-5 overall and undefeated in 5 conference games. They head to East Carolina for a 1 p.m. showdown this Sunday. And that's it for sports. I'm Al Hernandez. Now back to the desk with Paige and Devin.
Thanks, Al. That's all the time we have for today.
And if you have a story idea or a comment about something you've seen here on the show, email us at knightlynews.ucf.edu. And be sure to join us here next week again. And until then, have a great weekend.